So we have this kind of remarkable complaint that was filed by the Department of Justice. Basically, we have federal prosecutors who have charged two men attempting to bribe a purported IRS agent for tens of thousands of dollars in a scheme to help the Chinese Communist Party topple Falun Gong. What's your reaction?
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple of things that are remarkable about this. One is it shows the lengths that CCP agents, people working on the behalf of CCP, would go to try and silence, malign, or in their own words, as you just said, topple Falun Gong. I mean, think about what they did. They tried to bribe U.S. officials so that those officials would then take a U.S. agency and target people right here in America. That's what they're trying to do. It was audacious, and I think it says a lot about what the CCP, how concerned the CCP is about silencing Falun Gong.
Well, no, it's remarkable. So what they were actually trying to do was to get the IRS to revoke the tax exempt status of a Falun Gong related organization.
That's right. And by the way, this is not the first time we've seen or heard about diplomats, agents, even thugs approaching all kinds of U.S. officials over the last 24 years. But it is remarkable in the sense that the DOJ, the FBI acted on this fairly quickly. They were able to bring charges to these two men fairly quickly. So very, very happy about that.
Well, and I was also going to comment, there's been, of course, a lot of criticism of the FBI and the Department of Justice lately, but this looks to me like this is the FBI and the DOJ working as they were meant to.
It looks to be a very efficient operation from our perspective. I mean, it looks like just a matter of, what was it, a week and a half or 2 weeks from the time some of these bribes were made to the time that they were able to actually make the charges. So that looks like a very efficient operation.
So, the charges from my notes here are conspiracy, bribery, and money laundering.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a picture of what exactly the deal was?
Well, essentially what they were doing is taking funds from the CCP and giving them to this, what they thought was an IRS official, so that they could then, obviously take the IRS and weaponize it against Falun Gong. And these payments were going to be made in various installments over a period of time, I think ranging up to like $50,000, $60,000. So again, this shows that they were willing to take, I mean, that seems like a very big risk. They were willing to take these risks. They're willing to go to this extent, try anything they can to make things difficult to inhibit Falun Gong here in the U.S.
Well, and so how you mentioned that this is sort of a prevalent occurrence of, ostensible agents of the Chinese Communist Party trying to influence people here.
Absolutely. And it's something we've seen from the very beginning, going back 24 years. I mean, in fact, when the persecution first started, Chen, the top man of the CCP at that time, went to the 1999 Epoch meeting, which would then with President Bill Clinton. And that was the first thing he did, was hand him a big stack of propaganda material against Falun Gong and try to justify this persecution campaign. 2 years later, they did something very similar when Condoleezza Rice was National Security Advisor, and the list goes on and on and on. Governors, state legislatures, mayors. I mean, we've had countless mayors across the country who've received letters from the local or the nearest Chinese consulate saying, you must not support Falun Gong, you cannot give proclamations or denounce the persecution. And so this is something that's very, very common that we've seen for 24 years.
Very often this question is asked, why? Why would you persecute 100 million people? What were they up to?
It was really three reasons. The first reason was pure size. When the Chinese government did a survey that said there was 100 million people practicing, well, that's 40 million more people than members are in the Chinese Communist Party. And it doesn't matter what they're doing. That number of people doing anything outside their control, that made a couple of the top leaders nervous. The second reason is people have to understand that in Falun Gong was really, in many ways, the Renaissance in China. For 50, 60 years, traditional spirituality, traditional culture had been stamped out. Along comes Falun Gong, and it's a revitalization of those traditional spiritual values. And some leaders felt that was a threat. But the third reason, and really the straw that broke the camel's back, was Jiang Zemin was trying to build up a cult of personality to himself. And right as when he's trying to do that, in the 90s, along comes Falun Gong, and it was at whatever everyone was talking about. And so those three factors really came together, and Jiang Zemin is the one who gave the order in the summer of 1999, persecute this group. There was a power struggle, by the way. There were members of the Politburo who had family practicing Falun Gong. They read the book, but Jiang Zemin prevailed, and that's what really started the persecution of Falun Gong.
I mean, it's remarkable that Americans are involved in this potentially.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it is a common tactic of the CCP. It's not new. They understand that they can be a lot more effective if they can turn essentially and weaponize Americans against Falun Gong and other voices of dissent here on U.S. soil, because it's a lot harder to detect. And I would say to your viewers, stay tuned. There are a lot more CCP spies in this country. I'm sure there's more arrests coming.